I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and I want to welcome you to the 9th chapter of Bradbury and Karney's Intimate Relationships book. So today we'll be discussing sexual intimacy, the importance of sex, the functions of it, and some of the obstacles for people to have it. So the chapter starts with the once a day challenge, and that is Charlotte and Brad Mueller, or Mueller, who are pictured there, and they agreed to have sex every day for a year. But they did include an escape clause so that one of the partners could say, well, I just don't feel like it tonight. And Brad used the escape clause on day 305. But some couples are taking up the 365-day challenge, others for 100 days, 30 days, or 7 days. Now, Charlotte says, because they wrote a book about this, and she said that she was giddy when she didn't have to have sex anymore. But while it was the 365 days were occurring, there were many benefits. On her 40th birthday, Brad offered the challenge again, and she turned it down. So when most people have sex, they do it within the context of an intimate relationship. And adults in the United States rated a happy sexual relationship and faithfulness as a very important thing in a marriage. So it beat things like shared interests, income, and chores. Most married couples over 20 who've been married for more than 20 years and 92% of sexually active older adults continue to believe that sex is important. Sexual satisfaction is each partner's evaluation of the sexual aspect of the relationship. Partners who are most satisfied with their sex lives are most satisfied with their relationships. And this is true for all couples. Married couples, dating couples, same sex, different sex, old, young. The couple in that picture, everybody. This link is strongest for people who think that sex is important, which is pretty obvious. And people who believe specific sexual acts are important are more influenced by whether their partner is willing to perform those acts. The association between sexual and relationship satisfaction is stronger for men than it is for women. So they look at newlywed participants and this relationship and sexual satisfaction impact each other in both directions. So couples who connect sexually earlier develop a stronger bond, and that was true for both husbands and wives. When they studied couples married 10 to 30 years, initial levels of sexual satisfaction predicted relationship satisfaction across the time they were married. Let's talk about relationships without sex. So involuntary celibacy. So this is going without sex for an extended period of time despite the presence of sexual desire in a partner. This is rarely ends up with a satisfying relationship. Although people do stay in those relationships, maybe because they have children or they hope for some change later, because sex helps to define what it means to be intimate with a person. And so that's why it seems to be important. In terms of seeking out partners who are with some sexual experience, purity now takes a back seat to experience. So people want to be with someone who's had some experience, but not too much. I've never heard anybody bragging about how much sexual experience their partner has had before they met them. But that would be interesting. There's a common stereotype that sexual passion peaks early in intimate relationships and then gradually fades. And there's an anecdote where a couple is supposed to put a penny in a jar or I guess it could be a barrel depending on the couple, every time they have sex for the first year of their marriage. And then after that, take out a penny. And the idea is you never reach the bottom. Sexual desires aroused by novelty and risk, but commitment to a relationship is reinforced by familiarity and security. On average, surprise, surprise, couples have less sex as they get older, but it's usually due to physical changes associated with aging, and it's especially true for the men. Surveys in the United States and Germany confirm that sexual frequency and satisfaction peak in the first year of a relationship. It drops off precipitously after the second year, and then the decline levels off after that. But 1/3 of participants reported that their passion has stayed constant over time. For older adults, 65 to 80, 74% described their sex life as satisfying, and they found that declines are smaller in better relationships. The most common complaint of couples, now moving into quantity, especially straight males, is that they're not having enough sex. Couples who have sex more frequently are more satisfied with their sex lives, and this is true across the world, not just in Western cultures. Among newlyweds, the more often couples report having sex, the more satisfied they are with their sex lives over the next 4 years. And the length of the sexual encounter is important too. So longer is better. Anything good is better in larger quantities, though, right? Well, the association between sexual frequency and general happiness does not follow a straight line. So that people who are having sex 4 times a week aren't necessarily happier than people having sex 1 time a week. Couples who are instructed to increase their sexual frequency are often less happy about it because now sex is a chore. And so this is common, like if couples are trying to conceive a child or they've had problems conceiving a child. They have to do it on a schedule, and it's like, okay, it's time. So sex as an expression of desire is a turn on, but sex as an obligation isn't. Let's talk about technique. And so we'll start with the Kama Sutra, which is a book on virtuous living from 1700 years ago. And one of the chapters is devoted to sexual positions and practices. And it has a bunch of 64 different sexual positions are illustrated. You won't have trouble finding them on the internet if you're interested. But even in the Kama Sutra, quality is stressed over quantity. Now, people are more satisfied with their sex lives the more consistently they reach orgasm. Another surprise. For men, sexual satisfaction is higher when their partner reaches orgasm. Now, this is not really an issue for straight women because usually their partner achieves orgasm. People who report greater sexual satisfaction and more regular orgasms are more likely to report that they try everything, and I won't get into specifics about that. Couples viewed a list of 17 sexual acts and said, which ones they engage in. For everyone, those who were most satisfied with their sex lives engaged in it more frequently. And no specific techniques were crucial, but a variety was. Variety is the spice of life. Setting the stage for sex predicts the most satisfying sex life, too. So doing things like dimming the lights, romantic talk, music, and I guess music is very subjective because maybe it's classical, maybe it's like love songs, maybe it's, dubstep. It's whatever you're into. More time spent bonding after sex also predicted greater sexual satisfaction for both men and women, because sex isn't just about how it feels physically, but how it goes emotionally. The most enjoyable parts of sex, people report, are being present, feeling connected, mutual respect, and good communication. Specific techniques aren't mentioned. Understanding the quality of a couple's sex life requires understanding how they relate to each other outside of the bedroom, too. So good communication throughout the day predicts a happier sex life. And therapies designed to improve communication may have this side effect of improving people's sex lives, too. We want a partner who's responsive, and that means that their reactions to our disclosures fulfill our desires and goals in the moment. And this is important both in communication and in sex. Men and women feel stronger desire on days when their partner has been more responsive to their feelings. And this is because, your book says, because that makes them feel special and unique, and having a responsive partner is more attractive to people outside of the relationship, which apparently is a good thing. Sexual exclusivity makes the relationship feel safe, and so that's good too. Basically, anything that's good for the relationship is good for sex, too. Let's talk about, this was an aside in the book, about consensual non-monogamy. Now, consent is crucial in every way, but these are the various ways partners experience sexual or multiple intimacy with multiple people. So swinging is when a committed couple exchanges partners or maybe just has somebody else come in. An open relationship is when two committed partners agree that they can pursue emotional or sexual intimacy with other people, and sometimes they reveal it to each other, sometimes they don't. And polyamory is when basically, if you've ever seen those, they have TV shows about it, like Sister Wives, where everybody consents to it, but there's multiple marriage partners. Non-monogamous individuals rate their sexual satisfaction high. What are the functions of sex? Well, researchers found 237 different reasons why people said they had sex, and they divided them into 13 factors with 4 broad themes: physical, emotional, insecurity, and goal attainment. But starting a family was not a common reason for having sex, and it's because most people try to get pregnant a few times in their lives, but they try to have sex a lot more often than that. Let's talk about pair bonds here too. So a primary reason for sex is to facilitate and strengthen relationships. And a pair bond is an enduring partnership in which two people consider each other a major source of emotional and sexual connection. Now, neurotransmitters are the biological basis of pair bonds. And so it doesn't have to be a sexual thing though too. So for example, like oxytocin, I don't know about vasopressin, but oxytocin is released like if you have a pet and you're scratching your pet, or you're just sitting there in you could have a cat, and they enjoy getting scratched behind their ears too. And oxytocin is released by you and by the pet. It just helps bond people. So the research also shows that even thinking about sex activates the brain. Being sexually aroused leads to more positive thoughts about your partner and a desire to nurture the relationship. Relationship satisfaction could be higher immediately following sex due to a sexual afterglow. And this afterglow takes 3 days to wear off, which surprised me. That seems like a long time. When you have sex, you may be pursuing an approach-oriented, meaning you're promoting intimacy, that's hopefully, or an avoidance-oriented motive, and that's keeping the other partner from getting upset. Partners who have sex for pleasure or greater intimacy, surprise, surprise, are more satisfied with their relationships and with themselves. And partners who have sex to avoid conflict are less satisfied and more likely to break up. I don't think there's any surprise there. When one partner reports having sex for avoidance reason, the other person also says that it's not that great because going through the motions is not sexy. So having sex for the wrong reasons is worse than having no sex at all. Healthy sex may protect vulnerable relationships, though. The impact of negative affect on marital satisfaction depends on the amount of sex people are having. So frequent sex leads to satisfaction. Now, according to attachment theory, insecurely attached people should experience less satisfying and more unstable relationships. And there's hundreds of studies that support this. But plenty of insecurely attached people stay in couples. And that could be one person who's insecurely attached or both. Why? Because the effects of insecure attachment disappear in couples who have sex more often. At least that's what the research says. When women express high levels of intimacy, male partners become less anxious over time. And when men express high levels of desire, their female partners become less anxious over time. Sex is uniquely associated with intimacy for many couples because you're just having sex with that one person. It's the one act that you engage in with them, and only them. And make-up sex provides reassurance that the relationship is sound. So a lot of people like make-up sex. Affectionate touching has health benefits, but I want to stress that's with your intimate partner. That's not just with strangers on the street. Rates of heart disease are lower among older men who have sex more frequently and among older women who are more satisfied with their sex lives. Also, older people who have sex at least once a week do better on cognitive and memory tasks. And your book lists some positives of having sex too. So that kissing lowers cholesterol. These are just like totally, things that you see on the internet. But that physical intimacy reduces physical symptoms, so like backaches and headaches and insomnia. That Sex affects hormone levels. So there's a hormone called prolactin. It's released after an orgasm. And having an orgasm in a couple, you release 400% more prolactin than if you have an orgasm when you're alone. Sex also burns calories. And so men burn more than women, but it's based on body weight, so that may not be accurate. Your mileage may vary. To put it in context, though, that's not a lot more than just your basal metabolic burn rate. If you're running, it's about 15 calories per minute. And also, I want to make a note, too, because your book makes a note of this, too. These are studies of sex in a close, committed relationship. And so it's a consensual and satisfying relationship. Let's finish out with obstacles to sex. So Americans have been having less sex over the past 25 years, and it's completely restricted to married people. So never married people are having about the same amount, but married people are having less sex, and the decline's been the same across gender, race, geography, and education. So why aren't married couples having sex? Couple reasons. One is finding time. Couples have gotten a lot busier. By the 2000s, Americans are spending 50% more time at their jobs than workers in some European countries. And the hours spent parenting have more than doubled for college-aged parents. Couples spend less time alone together. Couples with children spend between 2 to 4 hours less time together than couples without children. Children are all joy and no fun. How about household chores? Well, women's time spent on housework fell as they began to work outside the home, and men's time nearly doubled, but women still spend 1.6 hours for every 1 hour spent by men doing housework. In the 80s and 90s, this is how things have changed. Straight couples had sex more frequently when housework was divided along gender lines, but now couples have sex more frequently when labor is equally divided or equitably do it. And so equal division of labor is important. Pornography use. Actually, pornography is a term for illegal stuff, but we use it kind of for everything. This is any type of media featuring nudity or sexual behavior that's explicitly intended to cause sexual arousal. The Supreme Court famously said, they know it when they see it. Exposure to porn could reduce partners' satisfaction with each other through contrast effects. So after viewing pornography, people might rate their partners less favorably. Porn may also reduce people's commitment to each other because in pornography, people are having sex with a bunch of different people. And porn may affect partners' beliefs about what behaviors are acceptable in their own relationships because pornography kind of comes with its own worldview, which places sex rather than intimacy at the heart of the relationship. People aren't, it's just a physical act. So a moderate amount, which researchers said was less than once per month, will not hurt sexual satisfaction. The reason why I'm laughing about this, I've talked about this before, and I've had students who were laughing about it, and I asked them what they were laughing about, and they said that there were guys in their dorm, guys were roommates, and they had 2 monitors in their room. One constantly had pornography, and the other constantly had sports, because they were really into soccer and basketball. So, and apparently pornography. So saying less than once a month is a moderate amount. Again, your mileage may vary. Women's use of pornography has been linked to better relationships too, and the effects seem to depend on how a couple uses it. So couples in which neither or both watch porn are more satisfied. So nobody watches porn or both people watch porn. That leads to better outcomes. And so this is trying to look on the bright side that pornography can help couples understand their own sexual response. So you can find out what you're really into, I suppose. Disagreements about sex are also important because they can threaten the relationship. Men often desire more sex than women in straight couples, and the larger the gap, the less satisfied they are with their sex lives. But this is true for same-sex couples too. When you have 2 different individuals, one is always going to have a higher sex drive, but and that might vary over the time of the relationship too. Sexual coercion is manipulating a partner using verbal strategies or physical means or other manipulative tactics to try to pressure them into unwanted sex. And the most common tactic is persistence, where the person keeps on asking for sex. Now, victims may feel that giving in is the only way to appease the partner, and this has severely negative consequences, though, for intimate relationships. The best way to combat feeling out of sync sexually with your partner is direct communication. Just tell them how you feel. And so positive approaches are better. So saying that you find them, very attractive, but you've had a hard day or there's a big day coming up tomorrow or something like that. It's not about them is much better than a negative one. And tone is always important. It's important in all aspects of life. But that's chapter 9, and thanks for listening.